One of the most mysterious murders of the 20th century happened in 1920s Germany. The suspects range from a family annihilator to a jealous, dead husband or a serial killer who had already wreaked havoc in the United States. We are doing the Hinterkaifeck murders today on MKUSUAL. The Hinterkaifeck murders. 6 slaughtered souls and the killer. Who lived among them? Bavaria, March 22, the Gruber's family isolated farmstead. Hinterkaifeck, set nestled in snow-dusted woods. So remote that neighbors would later say even the ravens avoided it. For days, the family had complained of eerie signs. Footprints leading to the house, but none leaving. A missing house key, the sound of footsteps in the attic when no one was upstairs. But then the whispers stopped. For 6 days, smoke continued to rise from the chimney. The cows were fed. The dogs stayed silent. But everyone inside the house was already dead. The victims were a family marked for death. Andreas Gruber, 63. The patriarch, a stern man with a reputation for cruelty. Locals whispered he'd had an incestuous relationship with his daughter. Kazelia Gruber, 72, his wife, a reclusive woman who rarely left the farm. Victoria Gabriel, 35, their widowed daughter, who'd returned after her husband's mysterious death in World War I. And finally, Joseph, 7, and Kazelia, 2, Victoria's children. The little girl's last words were reportedly, quote, "The man in the attic is angry." There's also Maria Baumgartner, 44, the new maid, hired just hours before the murders. She'd replace one who quit, screaming that the farm was cursed. So here's the crime scene. A real house of horrors. On April 4th, 1922, neighbors finally investigated the silence. What they found became Germany's most infamous unsolved massacre. In the barn, Andreas and Kazelia lay in a hayloft, their skulls crushed by a farming pickaxe, blood soaking the straw. In the kitchen, Victoria's corpse sprawled near the stove, bludgeoned so savagely that her scalp peeled away. Her toddler's body lay beside her, neck broken. In the nursery, Joseph's tiny body was found in bed, killed last as if he'd hidden under the blankets. His fingers were clawed into the mattress. In the attic, Maria the maid was dumped. Forensic notes mention defensive wounds and saying that she fought hard. Is it weird that when I'm picturing Maria, I'm picturing Alice from the Brady Bunch?
No.
I feel like it's been 100 years. Every time I hear about a maid, I picture Alice from the Brady Bunch.
I bet Alice got a mean left hook.
Yeah, that's why I figured she was like, yeah. The attic is a weird place to dump a body.
Yes.
I almost feel like the maid, I guess we'll get into details, but like, I almost feel like maybe the maid was hiding.
Could be, yeah.
Or was the first to be murdered, depending on the fact pattern that we're going to go into here.
That's probably where her quarters would be, where she would like sleep.
We'll get into that a little bit.
Okay.
So here's some more chilling details.
I guess I'm imagining like a quaint farm because it's so isolated. Mm-hmm. I'm imagining a pretty like humble abode.
I'm sure. Hey, let's look up a picture of it. Here's some of the farm. Here's some of the family. It's a good picture of the farm.
Okay, it's bigger than I expected.
The German are an industrious people.
It's true.
So here's some chilling details. The killer fed the livestock for days afterward with fresh footprints leading to the house and not leaving. So this person was coming into the house before they were murdered, and then was coming and going in and out of the barn and feeding the livestock and stuff, but like there's no trace of them leaving. A crime scene photographer from Munich later committed suicide, leaving a note saying, "I see their faces in the dark." Here's the suspects. Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor and Victoria's secret lover. He had a known affair with Victoria, was the father of her youngest child, proven by modern DNA testing.
Oh.
And the day before the murders, he'd argued with Andreas over inheritance. He also had suspicious behavior. He led the search party, but avoided the barn where bodies were, as if he knew. This one gets even weirder. It all goes back to Victoria, I feel like. Carl Gabriel, who's Victoria's supposedly dead husband from World War I.
Did say you had a mysterious death in the beginning.
Yes. He officially died in a POW camp in 1918, but rumors persisted that he'd survived, disfigured and insane. A man matching his description was seen near the farm that winter. And here's a creepy twist. In 1923, a tramp confessed on his deathbed and then choked blood before saying the name. Here's some other weird stuff that happened. Andreas Gruber, prior to the murders, obviously found a strange newspaper from Munich on the property in March of 1922. He could not remember buying it and initially believed that the postman had lost the newspaper. This was not the case, however, as no one in the vicinity subscribed to the newspaper. Just days before the murders, Gruber told neighbors he had discovered tracks in the snow from the forest to a broken door lock in the farm's machine room. Later on in the night, they heard footsteps in the attic, but Gruber found no one there when he searched the building. Although he told several people about these alleged observations, he refused offers of help, and the details went unreported to the police. According to a school friend of the then 7-year-old Kazilia Gabriel, the young girl reported that her mother, Victoria, had fled the farm the night before the act after a violent quarrel, and only hours later had been found in the forest. They were all killed by a mattock, known as a grub axe. And the perpetrator lived with 6 corpses of their victims for 3 days. During this time, they ate the food in the house, fed the animals, started fires in the fireplace. 4 of the dead bodies found stacked up in the barn, the victims likely having been lured there one by one. Prior to the incident, the family and their former maid had reported hearing strange noises. Interesting. So we had the suspects so far were the neighbor, Carl, the quote-unquote dead husband, and the Bavarian werewolf. I'm going with the Bavarian werewolf.
Okay.
I'm just going there.
He chose to use a pickaxe instead of his massive strength.
He's
and
half
claws.
man.
That's true.
People
okay.
always focus on the wolf part of the wolf man.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
That's very dehumanizing of you to werewolves. It's known for being able to move unseen through forest, unnatural strength, and may have, quote, hated the Gruber family for sins against God. What the f***? Well, that's okay. So we have the 2 suspects. Let's go to Carl for a second. He was the husband of the widower. Reportedly killed in December of 1914 during the First World War by a shell attack at Arras, France. Body never recovered. After the murders, people began to speculate about whether he had died. Victoria had conceived and given birth to her son Joseph in her husband's absence due to the affair.
Mm-hmm.
Boy is the product of incestuous relationship between Victoria and... There are other rumors that the boy was the product of an incestuous relationship between Victoria and her father, but I guess that was disproven by DNA analysis. After the end of the Second World War, war captives from the Schrobenhausen region, who were released prematurely from Soviet captivity, claimed they had been sent home by a German-speaking Soviet officer who claimed to be the murderer. However, some of the men later revised their statements, which diminished their credibility. Some theorized that the Soviet officer in question might have been Carl Gabriel, because those who claimed to have seen Gabriel after his reported death testified that he wanted to go to Russia. Lorenz Schlittenbauer. Shortly after the death of his first wife in 1918, Lorenz was believed to have had a relationship with Victoria and fathering Joseph. Schlittenbauer came under suspicion by locals early on in the investigation because several of his suspicious actions, as we described earlier. He also apparently unlocked the front door with a key and suspiciously entered the house alone. following finding the 4 bodies. A key to the house had gone missing several days before the murders, though it is also possible that Schlittenbauer, as a neighbor of the house, just had a key.
Yeah.
When asked by his companions why he had gone into the house alone when it was unclear if the murderer might still be there, Schlittenbauer allegedly stated that he went back to look for his son, Joseph. Oh, that's just double verified then. For many years later, local suspicion remained on him because of the strange comments, which were seen as indicating knowledge of details that only the killer would recall. According to information in the files for the case, local teacher Hansi Blager discovered Schlittenbauer visiting the remains of the demolished farm in 1925. Well, he did lose his son and his lover.
Yeah. He probably knew the family, too, from being a neighbor.
Upon being asked why he was there, Schlittenbauer stated that the perpetrators' attempt to bury the family's remains in the barn had been hindered by the frozen ground. This was seen as evidence that Schlittenbauer had intimate knowledge of the conditions of the ground at the time of the murders, but it also was snowing.
It was just winter. You know that the ground freezes.
He
in
lives
winter.
in the area.
These people don't know shit because, like, they assumed the story was probably forever that the father had the relationship with the daughter because they couldn't fathom an affair.
Yeah.
It was somehow more, likely that the people on this isolated farm that he had gotten his daughter pregnant because he would have been the only guy there. I don't know.
So apparently this guy Schlittenbauer Schlittenbauer conducted and won several civil claims for slander against persons who described him as the murderer. But that's just because, a defense to slander is that it's true, but you can't prove he's the murderer at that time.
Right.
Adolf Gump. The Gump brothers. What, Adolf Gump was listed as a suspect as early as the 9th of April due to his connections to Freikorps Oberland. As a Freikorps member, Gump was said to have participated in the murder of 9 farmers in Upper Silesia during the fight against the 1921 Polish uprising in the region. He had a warrant for his arrest by the District Court of Opel. In 1951, prosecutor Andreas Popp investigated brothers Adolf and Anton Gump about the murders at the farm. Their sister claimed on her deathbed that Adolf and Anton had committed the murders. As a result, Anton Gump was remanded to police custody, but Adolf had already died in 1944. After a short time, Anton was dismissed again, and in 1954, the case against him was finally discontinued because he could not be proven to have participated in the crime. I need to know what this Freikorps thing is. The Freikorps Oberland, Highlands Freikorps, was a voluntary paramilitary organization that in the early years of the Weimar Republic fought against communist and Polish insurgents. So what, they were just going around killing people in the countrysides?
They just call you a commie or whatever, and then...
Carl S. and Andreas S. In 1971, a woman named Teresa T. wrote a letter citing an event in her youth. At the age of 12, she witnessed her mother receiving a visit from the mother of the brothers Carl and Andrea S. The woman claimed that her sons from Salzburg were the 2 murderers. The mother said Andreas regretted that he lost his penknife in the course of the conversation. In fact, when the farm was demolished in 1923, a pocket knife was found that could not be clearly assigned to anyone. However, the knife could have easily belonged to one of the murder victims. That seems like a weak clue. It was a farm.
Right.
The track was followed with that result. The former maid of the farm was certain she had already seen the penknife in the yard during her service. A man named Peter Weber was named a suspect by Joseph Betts. The 2 worked together in the winter of 1919 and 1920 as laborers, and they shared a room. According to Betts, Weber spoke of a remote farm, Hinterkaifeck. Weber knew that only one old couple lived there with their daughter and her 2 children. It is likely he knew about the incest between Gruber and his daughter, suspected incest. Bells testified in the hearing that Weber had suggested killing the old man to get the family's money. How does that work? When Betts did not respond, Weber stopped talking about it. This is a lot of people had reasons to kill these people.
Yeah.
Paul Mueller, author Bill James, in his book The Man from the Train, alleges that a man known as Paul Mueller a German migrant, may have been responsible for the murders. Mueller was the only suspect in the 1989. Mueller was the only suspect in the 1898 murders of a Massachusetts family, and James believed Mueller killed dozens of victims based on research in American newspaper archives. The Hinterkaifeck murders bear some similarities to Mueller's suspected crimes in the United States, including the slaughter of an entire family in their isolated home, use of the blunt edge of the farm tool as a weapon, moving and stacking bodies of the victims, and apparent absence of a robbery as a motive. James suspects that Mueller, described as a German immigrant in contemporary media, might have departed the U.S. for his homeland by 1912 after private investigators and journalists began to notice and publicize patterns in family murders across state lines. This, if I am correct, Paola, Kansas had one of these murders. Nationwide attention came following the brazen 1911 murders of two families in a single night in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and a similar family murder weeks afterward a few hundred miles away in neighboring Kansas. I believe that that's the Paola, Kansas axe murder.
Okay.
So, man, dude, known as Billy the... Wow, okay. So, here's some other modern theories. Some suggest family annihilation. Schlittenbauer killed them to free Victoria from abuse. Post-World War I revenge. A veteran targeting war profiteers. Andreas sold goods at inflated prices. That sounds like the two farmhands maybe we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
Or something older. Hinterkaifeck was built on a pagan execution site. In 1991, a hiker reported seeing a, quote, tall man with wolfish eyes near the ruins of the farm. Today, nothing remains at Hinterkaifeck but a shrine where the house once stood. Yet locals swear on snowy nights you can hear a pickaxe striking wood. And the ghost of Kazila asked visitors, where's the angry man? In 2016, a paranormal team's EVP recorder captured a whisper, we are still here. The case remains officially unsolved, but in Bavaria, they'll tell you some doors should remain closed.
The Wolfman.
It's the Wolfman. Well, do you have any favorite suspects?
I don't know. It's all kind of tenuous. The neighbor was one of the suspects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why would he kill his lover and the mother of his child and his child?
Well, so they're having an argument about money,
about
him supplying inheritance or him supplying support for the kid. If something went wrong and he hauled off and killed the daughter, he might just decide to go ahead and just like...
Or he killed the dad, and then they were like, they turned against him. Like, how could you...
Yeah.
Okay, I could see that going sideways pretty quick.
It is weird he went in alone, had a key.
Yeah. But if he was a neighbor, they probably like traded. They probably helped each other. Like, oh, I need an extra whatever tool to get this done on time or something. So they probably had like at least like some kind of working relationship. And that's probably how he met the daughter.
Luring them all is kind of crazy detail.
Because I'm confused about the timeline. Like, how quick did this happen? Like, did he start at 8 a.m.? It was done by 9?
I don't think there's any way of knowing that.
Yeah, because it said, I don't know, there were details like the luring theory seems weird because how would they know what the maid said? She said the maid heard noises.
Mm-hmm.
But then also there was like, they had heard footsteps before all this happened. And so the guy was like, whoever this was around, creeping around the house. I don't know. It's just like, it's all over the place. It's hard to like.
It is all over the place.
The money thing, okay, kill one person and then, but you have to like really. That's like almost a crime of passion, or like maybe that's not the right word, but it's not like.
This is very methodical.
Why would you kill the kids if that were the case? You know?
Yeah.
Like, why would you kill everyone?
You think you take your kid? I don't think it was the lover.
Yeah, I don't either. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, if it's the ex-husband, that makes some degree of sense because you come back and you find out
you're like shell shocked. You got blown up and you're all disfigured, and then you're probably tortured in a camp.
And your wife has a kid she shouldn't have.
And then you come back and your wife has a kid. Yeah, like that probably makes the most sense. I gotta go probably with the ex-husband, or the guy who was accused of all the crimes in America.
Yeah, I think I gotta go with the Axeman. The Axeman.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think if it was the war criminal guys, the guys in that like unit,
Yeah,
I think they would have just shot everybody. This is a remote farm.
right.
There's really no reason to use an axe.
And they were paramilitary, so they would have like had weapons probably.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't have if they suspected these people of being Russian sympathizers or against their cause. They would have like not just shown up and I don't know.
Maybe they're mad about the war profiteering. That just seems so personal and so like to just go annihilate everyone and kill. You know what I mean?
Right.
It seems personal.
Yeah. The ex-husband would have had a key probably.
Yeah.
But then there's like just the coincidences of like the key goes missing and then this happens. He also could have known where they usually keep the key. So I don't know.
Or snuck in, taking a key off the table. I mean, everyone's dead, so it's hard to question people like where, you know.
Well, I thought it said the key went missing a couple days before.
Oh, okay.
But
I gotta go best weapon against the werewolf. I'm going with the German guy. I'm going with the here's one interesting. The testimony of Crescenza Rieger, the former maid who worked for the Gruber family at the farm. The former maid who worked for the family at the farm from November 1920 to around September 21 gave the names of several suspects to police. She suspected a local man who had helped with the potato harvest and therefore knew the premises. She believed Anton and brother Carl Bidschler might have committed the murders. She didn't know. She just had a list of people who would know. The maid said she believed that it was Carl Bidschler, the brother of Anton, who had no reason to be present at the Gruber property late at night. She told police she thought that Anton and Carl could have committed the murder together with a man named George Siegel, who had worked at the farm and known of the family's fortune. Dude, if they had a bunch of farm workers out in the middle of nowhere,
they got rich during the war.
In the 20s and they're rich, dude, it could literally just be anybody. Well, here's something I didn't know. Victoria once told Lorenz, quote, that it's better that I'm pregnant by my father, otherwise he would beat me to death. And it's suspected that she was only allowed to see other men because she was already pregnant. So there might have been incest going on. There might have been all kinds of fucking going on, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Maybe it just happened that... I don't know, maybe she was like sneaking over the neighbors and the dad was getting pissed and like, you're gonna embarrass my family, and things were escalating.
I'm going early serial killer Paul Mueller, the Axeman. I got to.
Yeah, I think that's what my gut says, but like the rational part of my brain kind of believes the
neighbor.
The neighbor or the husband. Since what if the neighbor, what if the ex-husband is a werewolf and that's how he survived getting blown up?
Boom, we solved it.
And his insanity.
World War I werewolf who went and became a Soviet soldier.
Case closed.
We solved it. All right, any other murders you want us to check out?
This one was weird. This one gave me like just bad feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I can like kind of sit back from it, but I don't know, something about...
Well, it is the axe murder of an entire family from a 70-something-year-old down to a toddler.
Yeah, that part of it made... I don't know, the setting, Anyway. Drop your favorite murder below.
Don't murder people. What?
Well, you have any other thoughts?
No, I never heard of this one.
Okay. Yeah, me neither.
Like and subscribe.
New nightmare unlocked. We love you.